Hello, family. Hello. This is the Encourager, Queen C, no longer bound. Welcome, welcome, welcome to my channel. Thank you for always coming. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. We are growing. Make sure you keep subscribing at Queen C NLB. That's at Queen C NLB. Stands for No Longer Bound. Thank you, and we appreciate you. Let's get to 15,000 and let's do it right away. Guys, listen, I want to say thank you for praying with me for the storm for Idalia that was in Georgia, Carolina, and Florida. They got battered. Guys, this is a video and it captures just about the fullness of what happened. Take a look at this video, and by all means, let's keep praying and let's keep believing God that everything will be okay. They will be recovered. Amen. And they'll make it through it. And let's pray that we make it through this hurricane season without another hurricane. This is the Encourager, Queen C, no longer bound, and we're going to see you right here next time.
Hurricane Idalia caused heavy damage to Florida's Gulf Coast early Wednesday as the storm brought strong winds, rain, and dangerous flooding to the streets from Tampa to Tallahassee. Around 4:50 p.m. local time, Idalia was downgraded to a tropical storm, according to the National Hurricane Center. Two people, a 59-year-old Gainesville man and a 40-year-old Spring Hill man, were killed Wednesday when they lost control of their vehicles while out driving during the storm, the Florida Highway Patrol said in a news release. When the storm made landfall, at around 7:45 a.m. Eastern Time, it was a Category 3 hurricane, according to the National Hurricane Center, packing catastrophic storm surge and damaging winds. Around 10 a.m. local time, it weakened to a Category 2 storm before further weakening to a Category 1 hurricane around noon. In a 12:30 p.m. press conference, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said the eye of the storm had left Florida, but storm surge was expected to continue and worsen as the tide rose later in the day. In Cedar Key, an island city of just about 700 people, storm surge poured through the streets. The area was under a mandatory evacuation order. The city's fire department shared a video that showed water rushing through dark streets as more rain poured down. The department said that things were going downhill fast and noted that the power is out in the area. In a second video, the department said the tide is expected to keep coming in until noon, and said that most of the streets around the downtown are underwater. The strength of the storm is keeping first responders from seeing how bad things are. A later video showed downed trees and rushing water, and photos show further destruction. Two videos posted by a man in Cedar Key showed water coming down side streets at around 5 a.m. local time. "It's going to swallow up the whole town," said Michael Presley Bobbitt. Later photos and videos from Bobbitt showed scattered debris, downed tree branches, and water continuing to travel down side streets. Bobbitt said in a caption that the water had reached his backyard. "Our entire downtown is submerged, houses everywhere are submerged." Photos showed floodwaters filling the streets in Tarpon Springs, just north of Clearwater, up the coast from Tampa Bay. In Clearwater, another area that had been under mandatory evacuation, officials said the storm surge was causing strain on the city's stormwater system. Residents who did not evacuate were told to restrict water and toilet usage. In St. Petersburg, police said they had to rescue a person from flooding at a mobile home park. A video shared by the department shows water reaching the hood of a car in the coastal city. The Pinellas County Sheriff's Office said overnight that there had been about 3 to 4 feet of flooding on a street of St. Pete Beach, another coastal city. A video taken in Newport Richey, a city in Florida's Pasco County, shows cars driving through water that reaches their headlights. The person who took the video said it was taken about 1.5 miles inland, and at low tide. High tide is expected in the area in the early afternoon. Treasure Island, a city located on a barrier island in the Gulf of Mexico, has closed its bridges and will not be accessible for hours, officials said on social media. Significant flooding was expected, and photos showed water reaching park benches. The Tampa International Airport showed flooding and empty tarmac. In a statement, the airport said that there was water on the south end of the airfield, but that runways were not impacted. The airport did well in face of the storm, the statement said. The airport is expected to reopen to arrivals at around 4 p.m. today. Other airports in the hurricane's path had also closed due to the weather. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on Thursday said Hurricane Idalia caused significant damage particularly along Florida's Big Bend, but the community is resilient. "We are going to work hard to make sure people get what they need," the governor said at a post-storm briefing alongside state and federal emergency management agency, FEMA, officials. According to DeSantis, about 420,000 accounts that lost power during the storm have been restored, and the bulk of the outages at this point are in that Big Bend region, a lot of the rural counties that bore the brunt of the storm. About 141,000 customers remain without power across the state, according to poweroutage.us. DeSantis noted that some areas, such as parts of Taylor County in the Big Bend area, remain 100% out. The governor added that there were about 40 successful rescues made as of last night. This includes 29 by the Florida National Guard. "Our fish and wildlife officers assisted with a medical evacuation yesterday, and they are conducting high water and welfare checks," he said. DeSantis said he and FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell will tour some of the hard-hit areas like Cedar Key and Steinhatchee to assess storm damage. Tens of thousands of people in northern Florida without power after Idalia will have to suffer through sweltering summertime heat. High temperatures across this hard-hit area are expected to climb into the lower 90s on Thursday afternoon. These temperatures are typical for late August, but Idalia's rain is causing the heat index, a measure of what the temperature feels like on the skin when accounting for relative humidity, to soar. The heat index for a majority of locations without power in Florida and Georgia will top out in the low to middle 100s on Thursday. A heat index value in the triple digits can be dangerous for anyone without access to power or a reliable way to cool down. Taking breaks during Idalia cleanup efforts and staying hydrated are important ways to prevent heat-related illness. Federal Emergency Management Agency Administrator Deanne Criswell said the biggest priorities on Thursday include restoring power and cleaning up debris as Idalia moves off the coast of the Carolinas. "Today the focus is to make sure that we've accounted for everybody and there is nobody still stranded in any of these communities, and begin to start to restore that power. The next part will be to start removing the debris, making sure we can have access into the communities," she told local media. Florida has brought in 30,000 to 40,000 linemen to work on restoring power, Criswell said, and the Army Corps of Engineers is on standby to help with installing generators. According to poweroutage.us, as of 8:15 a.m. Eastern Time, there are about 145,000 customers without power in Florida, about 107,000 out in Georgia, and 33,000 and 23,000 out in North Carolina and South Carolina, respectively. President Joe Biden approved an emergency declaration for the state of South Carolina due to Hurricane Idalia. Areas of the state, including in Charleston, have experienced severe flooding. The president's action authorizes the Department of Homeland Security, Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, to coordinate all disaster relief efforts aimed at alleviating the hardship and suffering caused by the emergency on the local population, and to provide appropriate assistance when necessary. Emergency measures, authorized under Title V of the Stafford Act to save lives and protect property and public health and safety, and to reduce or prevent the threat of disaster. Tropical Storm Idalia moved into South Carolina on Wednesday night after making landfall along Florida's Gulf Coast as a powerful Category 3 hurricane earlier in the day. While the storm had weakened as it moved across Florida and through Georgia, entering South Carolina with maximum sustained wind speeds of around 60 miles per hour, it was still bringing heavy flooding to the coast of the Palmetto State. It later moved on to North Carolina. A storm surge warning was in effect for the Savannah River, on the border of Georgia and South Carolina, up north to the South Santee River in South Carolina, the National Hurricane Center said Wednesday night. Along South Carolina's coast, North Myrtle Beach, Garden City, and Edisto Island all reported ocean water flowing over sand dunes and spilling onto beachfront streets Wednesday evening. In Charleston, storm surge from Idalia topped the seawall that protects the downtown, sending ankle-deep ocean water into the streets and neighborhoods where horse-drawn carriages pass million-dollar homes and the famous open-air market. Emily Johnson posted video of water coming over the seawall along the Battery, an area at the southern tip of the portion of Charleston that extends into the harbor. Video posted to social media by Kathleen Culler showed two men walking through knee-deep water in what appeared to be a parking lot along the Ashley River. Police in Isle of Palms, a small town on a barrier island to the east of Charleston, posted a video on social media showing deep standing water on one of the island's major roadways.
Holy shit.
Preliminary data showed the Wednesday evening high tide reached just over 9.2 feet, more than 3 feet above normal and the fifth highest reading in Charleston Harbor since records were first kept in 1899. Idalia also spawned a tornado that briefly touched down in the Charleston, South Carolina, suburb of Goose Creek, the National Weather Service said. The wind sent a car flying and flipped it over, according to authorities and eyewitness video. 2 people received minor injuries. Powerful onshore winds of about 40 miles per hour pushed water from the Atlantic onto the city streets of the historic city, according to weather meteorologist Steve Bender. Images from Charleston show just how much the water had risen as the storm approached. This is a dangerous situation, NWS Charleston posted Wednesday afternoon. The following image taken in downtown Charleston, showing how much roads were covered by storm surge. In addition to flooding, the powerful winds reaching gusts of 50 to 65 miles per hour knocked over trees. The high water levels are the result of a number of factors. The Forecast Center said that the combination of Idalia, swells from Franklin and the influences from the stage of the moon are creating the perfect event for flooding around Charleston and other low-lying communities in the Carolinas. The National Weather Service lifted the tropical storm and storm surge warnings around 2 a.m. August 31st for much of South Carolina's coastline, including Charleston and communities farther south. Myrtle Beach and the Grand Strand remained under a tropical storm warning as of 8 a.m. The Charleston office warned that heavy rainfall across the Lowcountry will lead to river flooding in the next several days. More than 27,000 South Carolinians awoke without power, according to poweroutage.us. Dominion Energy is reporting outages for about 4,000 of its customers in South Carolina. Only about 200 of those are in the Charleston area. At least 2,000 Dominion Energy users along Edisto Beach lost power around 6:30 p.m. August 30th when a tree fell on overhead lines, according to a spokesman. The majority of customers were restored between midnight and 1 a.m. The hospitals and medical offices clustered on the peninsula's west side seemingly avoided the worst of Idalia. Roper St. Francis Healthcare did not have any reports of extensive damage from the storm pending a status call later in the morning, spokesman Andy Lyons said. Roper Hospital downtown did well. Medical University of South Carolina saw the usual flooding that comes with storms and high tides, but there were no issues with water intrusion into the buildings, spokeswoman Heather Woolwine said. Some reports of leaks around windows in older buildings came during a morning call, but patients and families were well served, Woolwine said. The campus must remain closed August 31st to comply with county orders, but clinical services will resume normal operations in a few hours. Considering what could have happened, we all got really lucky, the spokeswoman added. Trident Health System's facilities north of the peninsula also didn't see any major effects from the weather. Officials served a free thank you breakfast to the staff at Trident and Somerville Medical Centers, as well as Live Oak Mental Health and Wellness in Latson, in appreciation of their efforts, spokesman Rod Whiting said. Fueled by higher-than-normal ocean temperatures and veering more to the west than anticipated, Idalia made landfall as a Category 3 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 125 miles per hour. The storm's high winds and heavy rain tore down power lines and clogged interstate highways and local roads with downed trees and debris as it slammed into Valdosta. Lowndes County Sheriff Ashley Polk told the Telegraph by phone early Wednesday afternoon that the storm was something I never want to see again. Polk said that in the storm's aftermath, amid felled trees and snapped power lines, locals were inquiring about which roads were closed. "It's easier," he said, "to tell you which ones are open. Interstate 75, which runs through Valdosta, the county seat there, was closed for about 6 hours. At times, it was blowing and raining so hard you couldn't see 15 feet in front of you," Polk said. The utility people, they had to pull their crews back and it got so rough. Scores of county roads were blocked by fallen trees. Telephone poles in spots were keeled over at 45-degree angles. You'd run up on a tree that had the road blocked, Polk said. You'd turn around and there'd be another one down behind you. There wasn't a single road in Fargo free of keeled-over trees and snapped branches as of 1:30 p.m. At least 3 roads were impassable, including U.S. Highway 441 north of town. Roy Abbott, the mayor of the town of about 250 people at the western entrance to the Okefenokee Swamp, spent the morning driving down every one of Fargo's roads to inspect the damage. "We got beat up pretty bad," Abbott said by phone while preparing to head back out on his tractor to clear debris. Fargo was prepared for worse than what it got. Until late last night, Abbott believed his town was in the path of the eye of the storm as it passed over Georgia, but its route shifted some 50 miles to the west, traveling over Valdosta instead. A shelter was set up in a city auditorium. Abbott encouraged people in mobile homes and other unstable housing to make use of the refuge. "If you live in a ramshackle-type house, there's been a few people I told, I think you best go over to the auditorium, and they did, they took my advice, they went over there," he said. Abbott said some 20 or 25 people, mostly families, stayed in the auditorium Tuesday night. Another shelter was set up in the corner of a church. While Fargo rode out the worst of the storm, the mayor said, the wind is still kicking up every so often. Hard work remained, clearing trees and repairing property damage. Fargo will need resources it doesn't have. "We're gonna assess what we need done and hopefully the state will help us. We're gonna need some manpower," Abbott said. He was skeptical help would come in sufficient quantity. "If we need, the county will help us, but the state, you don't count on the state here," he said. The state is not too concerned about this part of Georgia. Idalia left tens of thousands of Georgians without power from Valdosta to Tifton, east to Waycross and up to Savannah. Matt Pittman, who runs Pittman's Taxidermy in Homerville, a town of about 2,400 people between Valdosta and Waycross, said the brunt of Idalia had been pretty rough. "As the storms I moved through at about 1 p.m. Wednesday, Pittman said by phone that power was out at his place south of town, as it was for thousands across that region on the northwestern fringes of the Okefenokee. A tree just fell on the neighbor's house a few minutes ago, but they're okay," Pittman said. He figured some of the gusts that ripped through topped 80 miles per hour. "I just was talking to a neighbor that lives probably 5 or 6 miles down the road and he's got trees down all in his yard," Pittman said. He had a small metal building that looked like beer can if you crumpled it up in your hand.